Hate Seat. My name is Marilyn Clark. Today, our talk is sponsored by Clark Consulting Group, who is a company that develops your people to grow the business. So, my guest today is Nancy Ortega, and we're going to be talking about beyond the job description, building commercial skills across an organization. Today, we're also going to be talking about why commercial skills, also known as sales or business development skills, aren't just for salespeople anymore, and how organizations can build these capacities in employees who may have a functional or operational subject matter expert. My guest today is Nancy Ortega. She is a learning and development leader who's been involved in developing several programs through several programs and building these commercial skills. So, Nancy, I want to welcome you. Thank you for
Hi,
being a guest
of
on the show
course.
today.
So thank you for having me, Marilyn. Really excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. So, I have a little framing question I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
First, why do you think this conversation is so important right now?
Well, I think the reason why commercial skills is so important, it's because it's something that is not normally developed in individuals. We don't see it in college courses. We don't see it in MBA programs. When people join full-time corporate life, it's not something they're expecting. I think a lot of people build their technical expertise, their functional expertise. A
Mhm.
lot of us, when we start college, we're thinking about being experts in an area. And then you get to a certain level, and a lot of times there are revenue expectations along with the functional expertise. So it kind of takes people by surprise that there's a commercial skills or a business development component to their role. And so
Mhm.
that was something I lead learning and development for the Latin America region for a global professional services firm. And I think it took people by surprise as they thought about their career, and all of a sudden they got to a point and said, "Hey, I'm missing this skill set."
Mhm.
And that's kind of how our journey started.
Okay. All right. So I have a kind of a series of questions, but I'm maybe probing behind the questions to kind of ask you some follow-up things. So I wanted to start out, kind of start at the beginning about why this, matters, why these commercial skills matter. So why should an employee outside of sales really care about developing these skills?
Yeah,
Why should they care?
I think, Marilyn, in a lot of organizations, people that interact with clients are not just salespeople. I think a lot of organizations take people who have consultation skills but have an area of expertise, and they are really client facing, trying to help a client solve a problem or solve a challenge. And so I don't see that many organizations that have separate sales functions of individuals with strictly sales skills. I tend to see, especially in professional services, you
Mhm.
tend to see people that have a mixed role. They have to have an area of expertise, but then they need to bring along their business development capabilities as well. There's not separate people
Mhm.
that's their only role. And so you're seeing a lot of merging of those two skill sets into roles.
Mhm. And when an employee, what happens when an employee interacts with the client, but they aren't prepared for these conversations? What happens in those
Yeah, I
situations?
mean, and again, this can happen at every level. We have people at an associate level all the way up to director, partner level that they
Mhm.
just haven't had any formal skill building in this area. And sometimes you see people wanting to communicate with clients over email and really focus on the task. And that really impacts the strategic relationship that you could build with the
Mhm.
client. So sometimes people kind of revert to um, more email type communication,
Mhm.
or sometimes people lose opportunities, right? Where they're hearing a client mention something, but they're not able to kind of follow up on it. They're not able to use active questioning to really learn more about what's happening, what's the challenge within the organization, and then bring that back to their
Mhm.
organization and see if there might be a way to support that client. So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
tend to see either missed opportunities or people really having tactical conversations about the existing project
Mhm.
and not learning more broadly about a client's challenge or where they're trying to go in their business.
Well, I know for me, sales sometimes has been picking up on those cues.
Yeah,
Are sometimes we think when I think about them, it's like I don't want to be salesy. I don't want
that's
to feel
right.
like I'm being salesy,
You don't want
but
to be a used car salesman
yeah,
and try to
right,
force someone or right.
right,
Exactly. And
yeah.
that I think without the development of the skills, it can feel uncomfortable. And that's
Hmm.
why some people avoid it. That's why some people maybe don't take on more senior level roles because they know that there's a component of business development that's included.
Yep,
And I think for all of us, if there was more education and development in these areas, I think we would have more people kind of expanding their career possibilities.
I see. I see. Well, I do know that one thing about client relationships is building that trust. So, what's the difference between selling and building trust
Yeah.
with that client?
Yeah. So the program we have it by level. There's a director level of the
Hmm.
of commercial skills for directors, we call it, and then we call it commercial skills for managers. And the first module is strategic relationships. So it's all about building trust. What does that look like, right? What does that mean to a client? It's also about your own follow-up skills and being excellent at what you do,
Hmm.
because you have to be someone that is delivering the work that's been committed,
Hmm.
as well as focusing on the client's needs and really trying to, like you said, listen to the client and listen for what their personal interests are, what their challenges might be. But the basis of commercial skills is strategic relationships,
Hmm.
and trust is a part. So you really can't move forward unless you have that trust and that relationship.
Got you. Got you. So, next, I want to think a little bit about emotional intelligence because emotional intelligence plays a big part in this circle of relationships. It really does. So, how does emotional intelligence play into a client's interaction? I know some people can are very good at it, some of them struggle. So, for a program, what would be how does that play into the relationship, the client relationship?
Yeah, I think, because our main, if you think about building commercial skills, there's really three
Hmm.
main pieces. We call it strategic relationships. The second is we call it student of the client,
Hmm.
which is really deeply understanding your client's business, your client's sector,
Hmm.
having general commercial conversations with your client to understand where they're trying to go as a business. And then the last module, we call it student of the firm, which is
Hmm.
all about understanding the service offerings of the firm and understanding the adjacencies between what you do, what you deliver, and what else is being delivered around the firm. So you can listen for those connections.
Hmm.
But in terms of emotional intelligence, and I work with a lot of what we call global lead partners. So these are people that have global sales roles as well as areas of expertise
Hmm.
together. And I think what I notice about them compared to others is they really tune in to what people say. They're very active listeners. And if someone is mentioning a certain interest, a frustration, a hobby, they're right there to try to make a connection, but also just to think about it for later and bring it back up and really demonstrate those active listening skills. So you tend to see these global lead partners really be able to take a personal interest genuinely in the person who's the buyer of our services. And it's really so interesting to see them recall information. But of course, they're taking notes and they're planning these client interactions, but it looks very natural. And so they're really spending a lot of time getting to know someone deeply.
Hmm. When I think about also some of the critical, I would say, excuse me, critical skills when it comes to emotional intelligence is around empathy and adaptability. So
Hmm.
how would you go about coaching employees to use those skills
You said empathy and
and
adaptability.
adaptability?
Right. I think, first of all, what we teach in commercial skills is
Hmm.
you really need to be prepared. So whether it's building an agenda for your client conversation, your client meeting, um, researching all the work that has occurred already with this client,
Okay.
right? What lines of business have serviced the client, what engagements are active now. So there's a lot of research that we really encourage people to do. And what that allows you to do, and you're confirming with the client,
Hmm.
this is our topic, this is the reason, we call it our valid business reason of why we're meeting. You're confirming that with the client. But in the meeting, something could shift. There could be, during the week between you confirm the meeting and you have the meeting, there might be some strategic business decisions that have occurred at the client organization, and it might shift the topic. So adaptability is very important because you're really there to support the client and help them achieve their needs. And we always say, you're looking to work with a client to solve a problem, provide a need. And so their needs might change. There's different things that are happening in their organization, which might shift their priorities. And so adaptability is very, very important
Hmm.
because you're not trying to push, like we would say in a salesy way, a
Right.
certain service offering. You're trying to meet the client's needs. So that I think that takes away the salesy aspect of it because you're really supporting your client to help them be successful. So I think adaptability is a
Hmm.
big one.
Hmm. I for the times that I've worked with professional service organizations, and I know this too as a basically as a consultant and a coach, that being able to come in and really adapt to different cultures, the way different people work,
Mm-hmm.
understanding um, their strategic plans, understanding maybe history that comes before I arrived is helpful and how I can help you. So it's sort of like I need to know these things in order to help you as well. And being able to be flexible and adaptable, that's one of the key things in coming in that I have learned for myself is basically being able to adapt because here's a little story for you. I've been working with different schools across the country, and each school has its own culture. And walking
Right.
in when I'm working with them for that day and walking in, and I may have a different school every day of the week, it's like I have to quickly assess and adapt
Right.
to that culture in order for me to be able to service them the way they need to be serviced.
Right.
So I,
Yeah.
I, I kind of get that. So I wanted to think a little bit about exploring barriers or practical strategies when it comes to putting together these type of programs, Nancy. So, what's the most common fear that you feel employees express about engaging in a sales conversation?
Yeah. I think for programs like this, it does require practice. So we
Okay.
do have um, conversations where someone plays the client or they
Hmm.
they play the client peer. So it's one thing to understand the concepts, right?
Hmm.
It's another thing of practicing, and once you practice, you're more able to kind of make that behavior change and put it into your daily
Hmm.
professional routine.
Hmm.
But just understanding the concepts would not have you make that shift. So the practice is very important.
Hmm.
So, and we have a program that's over 750 professionals right now. They're
Hmm.
all managers. And so you have to think about how do we have them practice in a virtual way? How can we have them practice in person? And
Hmm.
so it feels safe and comfortable to them.
Hmm.
But practicing some of the concepts, practicing the conversations is very, very
Hmm.
important because that's kind of how do you get over the hump of this isn't scary, this doesn't feel awkward. And so we really need that practice. And then I think the other thing is people really need to hear from other people that are having success, or it is part of their
Mhm.
daily professional routine. So we have client stories. So we have partners, directors that come on to the program and say, I had this meeting and this is how I prepared for the meeting. These are the tools I used.
Mhm.
And then I was in the meeting and this is what happened. And so this is how I followed up. And people really gravitate to that. They're
Yeah.
really interested in what success looks like and to hear it from someone. I
Mhm.
think those are the two things that are really critical to the
Mhm.
success of the
Mhm.
program.
Okay. I just was thinking, sometimes you, in going in a client meeting, like you said earlier, you're prepared, but things may have shifted. And once you get there, you just have to pivot more or less. So are some of these, can you give me an example maybe in giving people the confidence in building these skills where they did walk in and everything was just upside down, nothing that they expected, kind of was like I would say a hit in the chest, and it was like, okay, they had to use their emotional intelligence to sum it up real quickly, figure out how do I pivot, what do I do? Is there any good story you can share with me about that?
Well, I think one thing we teach is it's called a valid business reason, like I mentioned,
Hmm.
and it's why are we meeting? What's the
Hmm.
purpose? What are you trying to achieve, client? Which would make sense for us to meet. And so um, the professional is confirming that with the client even before they meet, and that's how they're developing the meeting materials. And then, setting out the meeting invite, again, confirming what is the purpose of the meeting. But it does happen when you get to the meeting and you kick off, then clients are, oh no, oh no, that, there was just an announcement that we're going to go through an acquisition.
Right.
And so I can't talk about that anymore. And so it does happen as much as you can be prepared, right?
Hmm.
You're following what the goals and intentions are of the client, and their priorities can change.
Hmm.
So what you need to do is be prepared as possible, but be
Hmm.
adaptable.
Okay.
And really, those active listening skills come in, and we have all the resources in the firm available to us. So as your client explains their new priority,
Hmm.
then you would be able to pull from the other resources and other subject matter experts that might be in different areas. But that's why what we call student of the firm is so important. You have to understand what are the other service offerings that are happening around you and have contacts in those areas. So
Hmm.
then when the client is explaining, this is what's happening, you may be able to say, I might be able to bring back my contact, my colleague. This is something that we offer to other clients. Would that be helpful to you?
Right. Okay.
So a client's not expecting you to have all the answers,
Hmm.
but they are expecting that you're a good listener as they're explaining what their needs are. You're able to make connections between what their needs are and how you may be able to support them. So it does happen, right? But
Hmm.
I think being prepared can help you support the client as their priorities change.
Hmm. Okay. I like that you talked about how you share in the training. Part of it is they do, role playing, they take care of different vignettes. I like that part that they do. Let me close this up. And I wanted to ask, um, and I like the part about how you others that are more experienced or have gone through the program and have been out and done this kind of commercial selling with clients, the stories that they can come back, the best practices, some of the
Hmm.
war stories and how they handled those situations. Those are always very helpful,
Hmm.
especially in a training situation. So those are ways to provide safe ways to practice the skills. Is there anything else about how organizations can provide safe ways to practice the skills you can think of?
Yeah, so we have more formal education. That's what we're talking about, right? We're talking
Right.
about 4-month programs. It's a mix of virtual and in person.
Mm-hmm.
But, one of the things that we're trying to do as a firm that is a real best practice is never go to a client meeting alone.
Mm.
So if you're a director, if you're a partner, you always need to bring someone with you, someone from your team, someone more junior. It doesn't mean that they would participate. They may not have the skill set to speak during the meeting, right? They might not be a thought leader in the topic you are talking about, but the exposure to the client meeting and to see the dynamic is so helpful. Because of COVID, you would be surprised how many people have not been to a live in-person client meeting.
Oh.
And again, you can, just like we're talking virtually and
Mm-hmm.
you can do business virtually, but to be in a live meeting and to be able to observe those dynamics, how does it kick off? How do I pivot when the priority change? How do I close? What's
Mm-hmm.
my follow-up? It is so helpful for people to be part of that and to absorb that. And it makes having those conversations less
Mm-hmm.
scary and less intimidating. So that is something, if you can bring someone with you and then you can debrief when you're in the car, you can debrief after you're walking down to the lobby. You'd be surprised how helpful that would be as the person possibly for one of the first times is put into a client meeting and now understands, okay, this is the flow. This is what this is like. It's not as intimidating as I thought. So that's probably one of the things that I would suggest.
Okay.
And then the other thing is, do not wing it. Don't,
Mm-hmm.
as you're driving to the client meeting, don't wing it and say, oh, I'm going to get there 15 minutes early and then I'm going to park and I'm going to sit in the car and I'm going to think about it. Using some of the tools that we have to prepare for the client meeting. We have something called a meeting planner.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is building an agenda, that valid business reason that we've already talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Getting those in place and involving your team to complete those tools will help more junior people understand, oh, okay, this is the process that I use to prepare and get ready for client meetings. So those are
Right.
things that don't require any kind of formal learning
Exactly.
programs.
Mm-hmm.
We could all do that starting tomorrow,
Yeah.
and it really just helps our next level of talent
Mm-hmm.
move on the way to really enhance their commercial skills.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yep, I totally agree. I totally agree. There's nothing more, I don't think, impactful in learning than to actually have it happen, have it happen, be in the moment or have that incident happen where you have to go through the
Right.
meeting. Yep.
And even
That's the best
just,
teacher. Mm-hmm.
and like if we think about the 70-20-10 rule, we have that 20%, which is observing, right? So I can observe. It doesn't mean I'm doing it, right? It doesn't mean that I have the skill to practice it, but observing someone, being mentored by someone, that is so helpful to hear the words that people use in these client conversations. So it's a big learning experience for our
Mm-hmm.
professionals.
Okay.